Hey everybody, welcome back to Human Reaction, your weekly source for independent commentary on cultural news and politics, where it's always our mission to arm you with the tools that you need to cut through media misdirection and resist the mono-narrative. I'm here with the usual suspects, David Rand and Kyle Mack. How are you boys?
It's good.
Fantastic, man.
Good.
Yeah, feeling good.
What are we talking about today, David?
Well, first up, Tucker Carlson has been confirmed as a Russian asset, and we're going to talk about that.
I knew it.
A new immigration bill dies a terrible death thanks to a based Speaker of the House who is based with a capital B.
With a capital B.
Nikki Haley is so unpopular, she loses to literally anybody but Nikki Haley. It is too funny not to talk about. We're going to be talking about that and other election updates.
And while you're here, like, comment, subscribe wherever you are. I know we just had 1,000 subscribers on TikTok. Our freest platform is what it seems to be, is the Chinese platform, right?
Thank you, CCP. We appreciate it.
And we are like right there next to YouTube exclusives. We're like 2 watch hours away. We're like right there.
It's 44 watch hours away, but that's basically 2.
Yeah. If everybody just watches an hour.
Yeah, this episode will bring us over the edge. No problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have some big news here, you guys. We have to give credit where credit is due. Our esteemed colleague, David Rand, is now a published journalist via the Mises Institute. Give it up for him. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
He had an article published today?
This morning. Yep.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We're going to link it in the show notes so that you can go check it out. It's awesome. We're so happy for you, David. Congratulations.
Really, man, it's such a huge moment for me because it's like I've been reading Mises.org forever. Learned so much from those guys, and I formulated, with the Young Voices, who's my partner on this, an article. They helped me write it and get all the way through the editorial process, which I need an editor. I'm not the best writer without someone to bounce ideas off of. And they did a fantastic job pitching it and got it right in.
Awesome. So hopefully we see more from you on that front.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Dave's showcasing his big brain right now, and I think next we got to move over to, there was a very important clip coming from the big brains leading our country right now.
God, I can only imagine what this is going to be.
So let's hear what he has to say.
There is some movement, and I don't want to. Well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
But yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas. But it seems to be a little over the top. We're not sure where it is. There's a continuing negotiation right now.
A little over the top.
Over the top. Hamas. They're known for their dialing it in. The response is just right.
Yeah. So I don't want to undermine your big brain, David, but I mean, you got some heavyweights that you're dealing with here.
He's running the free world over here.
Yes, running so many things.
They're a little over the top.
I'd say at best he's Roomba-ing.
Ooh. We got to give credit where credit's due on that joke too, though. That came from Shane Gillis' stand-up special.
Is that
That's
true?
where that came from.
Oh, well,
yeah.
I just like saying.
I mean, it's good. It's good, but I just want to make sure that nobody thinks we're plagiarizing jokes.
Yeah,
we're not trying to Carlos Mencia this shit.
I can plagiwance.
Well, I don't know.
Intellectual property is a joke.
Says the guy who just had an article published.
You want to copy it and say it's your own? Have at it.
Hey, the Harvard president did it.
Gay!
Because her name is Claudine Gay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You pull. I see the pull.
I see what you're doing.
All right.
Tucker Carlson is a Russian asset. All the media told me so. What's going on here, Kyle?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we had to reschedule our recording time, and this is happening just before the interview comes out, so we can't actually cover the actual interview itself. Hopefully, we can still do that later.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the media hype around it and the anti-Tucker sentiment that's happening in the media is very interesting. We have a bunch of things from like Hillary Clinton talking about how he's so clearly an asset and he just gets fired from everywhere. You have CNN just like losing their mind over this. But I think we should probably start off talking about Tucker explaining why he's in Moscow right now.
Yeah. Let's hear from him himself.
We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously. So we've thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians, and it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy. The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the US dollar. These are not small changes. They are history-altering developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And they think that because no one has told them the truth.
I think we could pause there for now. But you get kind of the idea.
Great point.
He goes on for another couple minutes here explaining it. But clearly the Western media is not happy with him. He's talking about how Putin's not taking any other journalists from the American press. Tucker, I think, made a misstatement in his video. I think he says this later, but he says that nobody's even trying to get an interview with Putin. That's not true. So like that's what the media is kind of trying to cling on to right now. They're like, oh, we tried, but Putin won't let us because we're not Russian assets, right? Like that's the way that they're trying to paint it.
Right, but in reality, the truth is that Putin probably looks at their coverage of things happening in America and is going, well, they're not going to fairly report what I have to say. They're going to twist it in every way they possibly can to suit their narratives, right?
With how the media largely covered the Ukraine war, especially, right?
Exactly.
Which was a mono narrative is of the best example, where it was an interpretation that was just happened to benefit the political and foreign policy aspirations of the American foreign policy elite and the blob. And so when that happens, of course, what he would see is this is a person who's not going to say my side fairly. Yeah. And which is what you want. I mean, what you want out of journalists is not to filter for you what the point of view is to fairly state it. Maybe commentate on it, but at least fairly state it up front.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things here is the Kremlin actually came out to kind of get ahead of these types of statements, saying the Kremlin says Putin agreed to interview with Tucker Carlson because he differs from traditional Anglo-Saxon media. He has a position that differs from the rest of Western media. It's not pro-Russian by any means, and it's not pro-Ukrainian. Rather, it's pro-American. But at least it stands in clear contrast to the position that the traditional Anglo-Saxon media takes, right? Mm-hmm. Which there's been plenty of interviews in the past of Putin by people like CNN, NBC, et cetera, name them, like all the alphabet soup agencies that are our media, right? Mm-hmm. And they're always they're not very productive, I would say. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of them are, they dub over him with like a very aggressive sounding Russian man. So it makes him seem like he's like way more aggressive than he actually is. But when you actually listen to him speak, he's actually way more stoic and like calm mannered usually in his interviews, right? And they're all just like, why did you kill this person? You know, you're poisoning people. And then Putin having to be like, right?
Yeah. Like,
that's how these things go, right?
Yeah.
You know? So I think it makes perfect sense that he's just like, yeah, I'm going to actually have somebody that's going to maybe not be so aggressive with their media practices, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe at minimum, I mean, the ideal, not having seen it, but just commentating on the potential is for Tucker to both push on him, fairly like a journalist should, ask him hard questions, but like, it's not going to be questions that are going to benefit or be set up in the paradigm of American hegemony, right? It's going to be set up in the paradigm of like, why aren't you just doing everything that Foggy Bottom says you should do, right? It's going to be in the paradigm of, why are you doing this?
Right.
Which is way more, which obviously is what most people want out of their media personnel.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think about the value that could come from truly understanding Russia's motivations here. I mean, that can absolutely swing public sentiment, if people trust what is being said, right? But if you don't have reporting that's accurate or that you feel is at least accurate, you have no idea if you can believe that narrative or not.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask the average American, why did Russia invade Ukraine? they're going to be like, well, because he's Hitler and he wants to dominate the world. Something like that.
Yeah.
And in the best case scenario, they're going to say, yeah, like he's a terrible person. He did it so that he can get the spoils of war, but it's not our business. Right. That's the best outcome you can get. I don't think very few people are going to say NATO encroachment and we were there and we've been doing all this since 2014 and the Maidan revolution, all the stuff that we've covered and all our audience knows. Average person's not going to know that. So hopefully this increases the average IQ of some strategic empathy to understand Russia's point of view.
So what exactly have the media been saying about Tucker in the lead up to this interview, which, as we mentioned, is going to be published tonight? Hopefully this episode will be out just before then.
So what we have here is from CNN, and they're trying to they're taking every piece of his little 4-minute clip here and then trying to attack it, right? So we'll start with the CNN clip.
Interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin.
Tucker Carlson is lying from the streets of Russia, no less.
Lying?
Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin.
That's a lie. Serious news outlets, including CNN, have requested Putin to interview over and over again.
Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice.
Another lie. Serious news outlets, including CNN, have covered and, of course, reported on Putin's words since this war began, including one of his baseless justifications for the invasion of Ukraine, which he initially claimed was to stop the Nazis.
First, because it's our job. We're in journalism.
Tucker Carlson is not a journalist. Not even close. And his former employer in a court case actually agreed. Quote, the general tenor of the show should then inform a viewer that Carlson is not stating actual facts about the topics he discusses and is instead engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary.
You get the idea of where all this is going. Right?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so first up, I need to say this. She's wrong about the Nazi situation in Ukraine. Now, is that an actual motivation? No, it's a branding motivation, I would suspect, by Russia. When they say, we're doing this to stop the Nazis from killing Russians in Ukraine, what he's talking about is the Donbass war that went on for many years and tens of thousands of people died in. And are there literal Nazis who are participating in that? Yeah, that was the fact. That was the reporting of the war, of the tragedy that was happening, of the shelling of cities in the Donbass since 2014 till 2020, 2020. Mm-hmm. That entire time frame was covered as, look at all these strange Nazi bombs. You could find Vice Television doing in-depth reporting, Vice TV doing in-depth reporting, embedded amongst like literal National Socialist, racist Ukrainian militias in the Donbass in like 2019 and 2018. So it's like, it's crazy for them to go back and be like, that's not a real motivation. Well, it's like, well, yeah, that's branding, the motivation, but it's not inaccurate. I mean, it's like, it's there. It's a thing that he said. She is literally giving commentary as she says that while criticizing Tucker of having commentary as he says also true things.
Well, and I love, speaking of branding, how she repeatedly reiterates that CNN is a serious news outlet. Like, just so you know.
We're super serious.
We're very serious.
Yeah, and the additional thing is you have the neocons going crazy, right, on Twitter about this. I'm just pulling up 4 random runs right here. Like there's these accusations here that are basically suggesting that Tucker Carlson's getting honeypotted and Putin sending in ballerinas to.
Okay. Yeah, we got to explain this. So George Bernard Shaw, who was he, Kyle? Eugenicist. But
yes.
Yeah, but he was one of the reasons why just after the Russian Revolution, he thought everything was going so great there, right? Because he was a socialist, and he was saying, oh, man, everything's going so well in Russia, and because they cultivate a very specific experience in Russia from the like, oh, we're going to go tour this factory. Look how great the factory conditions are. And when, in fact, in USSR is actually going terrible. So what he's kind of saying is that, oh, man, this... Tucker's getting a cultivated experience of Russia to specifically twist his coverage, and here's him at a shopping market and all that. And
George Bernard Shaw, correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be mixing him up with somebody else in my mind. He was an Irish guy that went and reported in the Soviet Union. Is that who I'm thinking of right now? Right?
Yeah. Well, he's like
an Irish like playwright or something.
He is a playwright.
Yes.
Yes.
I just remember him being
And
big into
political
eugenics.
Yeah.
But-
He's a multifaceted Renaissance man.
yeah. Irish playwright, critic, polemicist, and political activist.
Yeah.
So I
But
mean,
he got propagandized by the Soviets and made some wrong statements that really played out terribly for the West because they believed the guy, right? And so this guy's obviously indicating that Tucker wouldn't be able to tell the difference between these things.
Yep. So you have this guy who's a journalist down in Ukraine, right? Like he's the Ukrainian.
His name is
bio
Jay
type of thing.
in Kyiv.
Question: do we know, is Tucker there, like moving about on his own accord, or is he being toured around by some representative of the Kremlin?
There's been a lot of videos that have come up from Russian journalists that have encountered him, and it seems like Tucker's with his own entourage while he's going around, like his producers and things like that. Like, there's been multiple videos that are like, I'm Russian journalist. Have you interviewed Putin yet? There's been a bunch of those floating around. So it seems like he's on his own.
So it's not like they could very easily, under those circumstances, make sure that every shop he went into was well stocked or whatever. They couldn't necessarily pull a George Bernard Shaw on him if he's able to move freely about the country.
Yeah.
And then he's obviously indicating that there's a honeypot situation going on here with the young ballerinas, quoting, scare quote, ballerinas with perfect English to pop up everywhere in Moscow, eager to get him to intimate, compromising positions, which is just pure speculation. I mean, it's absolutely... And this is,
but all the neocons are retweeting this, right?
Of course. Don't believe anything he says because ballerinas.
You also have Bill Kristol here, one of the top neocons himself. Perhaps we need a total and complete shutdown of Tucker Carlson re-entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what's going on.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah.
This guy.
You got Gary Kasparov retweeting Steve Rosenberg, who's another. Steve Rosenberg says, interesting to hear Tucker Carlson claim that no Western journalists have bothered to interview Putin since the invasion of Ukraine. We've lodged several requests with the Kremlin in the last 18 months, always a no for us. And then Gary Kasparov is the professional, like he used to be the number one chess player. He's Russian. He's very like in the neocon, neoliberal, anti-Russia, America supremacy sphere politically. He says, because you're an actual journalist, Steve, not a Kremlin toady. As Amonpour, that's how you say that, right? And others have pointed out, even a managed show with a legitimate journalist is unacceptable to a dictator like Putin. Why spend 2 decades crushing free media otherwise, right?
That's a good criticism. I mean, Putin has problems as a dictator where he's definitely spent time giving a hard time to his media opponents and dominating media in this country. The trick is so has Zelensky. And yet one side we've chosen to support in this war.
And how much of the rhetoric around that is American propaganda too?
Yeah, I mean,
There's
I don't know how much free press exists in Russia, but there are examples that we've heard about that you've seen in the media of people using broadcasting license in Russia for criticizing Putin, but maybe they lost it because they forgot to pay their stuff. I don't know. Of Russia Today being kind of pushed in Russia while other competing institutions can't. It would be like if you got on television and PBS was the only television channel you could find anymore.
Yeah,
You'd be like,
my understandings, because I've looked into this in the past, because I always, whenever I hear the same buzzwords being thrown,
Right.
Putin's a thug, Putin's a killer, he's stifling, he has a propaganda bill, blah, all this stuff. When you look into it, you're like, oh, it's like, there's like half truths laced in there. It's the same thing like the anti-gay propaganda bill. All what it is that teachers can't teach this to kids.
Yeah, it'd be like a Florida bill.
It's like if you're under 18, you can't propaganda. The anti-propaganda bill is you cannot propagandize children.
Yeah,
like that's what it is. But then you have in Western media being like Putin hates the gays, right? Like that's how it gets.
Same way they do it in Florida
out, right?
with DeSantis, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the same people. And I'm not. And once again, I'm not saying he's just the head of a government, and all governments are evil and corrupt and terrible. So don't be surprised if his government does things we don't like as well. That doesn't suggest, of course, that therefore he's even like any different from any of these other people or actors. And that's really the difference, is that a lot of people are just low IQing this, and they're just like Russia bad, therefore interview of Russian men bad.
It's a weak argument because we just got done talking about China, obviously, and we criticize China for their control
that was
of
earlier
media
today, just so everyone knows. We didn't actually just get
well earlier today, yes, prior to recording this conversation. We criticize China for their control of their media, and yet we have American citizens who should ostensibly believe in the First Amendment, saying that a journalist shouldn't be able to report to American citizens, unredacted, what a leader of a foreign power has to say. And I think that's just very obviously super hypocritical here.
Yeah. You got this guy saying that the EU should sanction Tucker Carlson because he is no journalist, but a leading Kremlin propagandist. The EU has rightly sanctioned a score of leading Kremlin propagandists and many Europeans for various reasons. It would be a mistake not to sanction Tucker Carlson. Keep in mind that the Ukrainian government killed an American citizen because he was a Russian propagandist, probably in a work camp.
To me, the term Russian propagandist is sort of analogous to, referring to someone as Hitler, right? And as we were talking about before the show as well, you call someone Hitler, all of a sudden you can't build a criticism of the person calling that person Hitler. You can't come to their defense or their aid,
right,
or find any redeeming qualities, because if you do, you're defending literal Hitler. Right. Calling someone a Russian propagandist is just like cutting the legs out from underneath them without ever actually contending with the arguments or the statements that they've made.
Well, and that's the goal. The
Exactly.
goal is to shut down debate, to stifle dialogue.
The funny thing is that's exactly what Putin said in the documentary with Oliver Stone. So I rewatched Oliver Stone's documentary with Putin for the lead up of this, just to kind of refresh my memory on some of these things. Oliver Stone back in 2017 put out a 4-part, like hour each for each part, interview process that he had done with Putin over 2 years, basically from the 2015 to 2017 period. So before 2016 election, after 2016 election, you kind of get the whole picture of that. And in the aftermath of the 2016 election, where everything is Russia hacked the election, all that stuff, right? That's what Putin compared it to anti-Semites blaming the Jews on everything. He said in America, it's very popular to just blame Putin on or blame Russia on everything because it's a boogeyman, but all it is just the internal squabbling of American politics, and it says much more about American political culture right now and how much that needs to be fixed rather than anything actually going on geopolitically.
Totally.
But it was funny because he said he used the anti-Semitism as a reference for
Interesting.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
What did Hillary have to say?
So Hillary was interviewed by MSNBC, another one of these people. And there was 2 spots in the interview that I thought was very interesting. This is her talking about how much of a puppy dog that Tucker Carlson is.
I mean, he's like a puppy dog. He somehow has, after having been fired from so many outlets in the United States, I would not be surprised if he emerges with a contract with outlet, because he is a useful idiot.
They bleeped
He
Russia.
says things that are not true. He parrots Vladimir Putin's pack of lies about Ukraine. So I don't see why Putin wouldn't give him an interview, because through him, he can, continue to lie about what his, objectives are in Ukraine and what he expects to see happen. It's really quite sad that not just somebody like Tucker Carlson, who has, as I said, been fired so many times because he seems unable to, correlate his reporting with the truth, but also because it's a sign that there are people in this country right now who are like a fifth column for Vladimir Putin. And why? I don't know. I mean, why are certain Republicans throwing their lot in?
I'm sorry.
Why are, other Americans basically believing Putin? Why did Trump believe Putin more than our 11 intelligence agencies?
I don't know. Do you have a working theory on
I do have a working theory.
See, this is
that journalism right there.
This is the good journalism at MSNBC.
Are we going to get
not pushing back a psychopathic, warmongering, terrible human being whose millions of lives are gone today because of Hillary Clinton's policies in the Middle East? As a senator and then as Secretary of State. And this lady's just like, oh yeah, I guess they're all just Russian clans, all the people who don't agree with your American foreign policy establishment beliefs. Oh my goodness.
So I was just looking at the comments below.
Oh,
as if the words of a pedo's wife mean anything.
oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Twitter is always good.
They
for
don't
some
even need
comments.
that. I mean, I'm like, it's just even knowing anything of her record as a senator and as Secretary of State should completely disqualify her from any amount of commentary about someone else's point of view on foreign policy. It's completely ridiculous. She's been wrong about every single decision for a decade.
And she was wrong to call Tucker Carlson a puppy dog because people love puppy dogs.
Bad branding. Bad branding.
There's another clip that I want to play here from Hillary as well from the same interview. It's 30 seconds.
It's
it's
more than just the political partisan advantage. There is a yearning for leaders who can kill and imprison their opponents, destroy the press, lead a life that is one of impunity, unbound by any laws. There's a yearning among certain people in our country for that kind of leadership, and I find that absolutely gobsmacking terrifying.
This is the do the thing and blame your opponent for doing the thing that we're witnessing right here. What did Zelensky's regime do? Who did they kill? A journalist that was critical of the Zelensky regime?
Yep.
Guys.
Well, and there's also, because this is another element, when I've watched previous Putin interviews or when I've watched that Oliver Stone documentary, or there's been a bunch of like MSNBC interviewing Putin before, and they'll ask him about like killing your political opponent, all the propaganda that we hear around that, which may or may not be true. Like, I'm not saying it is or isn't true. There's not a whole lot of evidence that's actually been put forward that suggests that it is true, right? Well, but he'll then always smack back, well, what about all the people in prison for January 6th? like, it's just like a very simple thing where you're maybe we should look inward too before we start looking outward towards these other countries and what they're doing, right?
That doesn't mean that Putin. Yeah, clean your room.
Good. That was good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That was a good impression.
Thank you.
Oh, clean your room. Hail lobster.
That doesn't mean that Putin doesn't kill his political opponents. It's just that Hillary Clinton has literally, in the same interview, accused all the people who disagree with their foreign policy of being a fifth column for another country. That indicates that she'd be willing to use the power of the state. In fact, as Secretary of the State, the FBI was actively investigating the presidential candidate of the number one contender from the opposite party. Right? If there's a weaponization of the DOJ or the FBI or the CIA, it was under her watch. Mm-hmm. As Secretary of State. So she's everything she's accusing Putin of. She's just the American feminazi version of it.
Well, a lot of the things going on in the Middle East are literally just Hillary Clinton going in as Secretary of State and the people around her going in and manipulating elections to prop up people, right?
Yeah,
like that's what happened in Yemen, right?
Yes.
It's her going in and just installing somebody because they're like, hey, we're bringing democracy to Yemen. Oh, there's only one person on the ballot, right? Right? Like it's like that type of stuff, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. So it is so crazy. I mean, watching her literally accuse, and the sheer amount of unaware. I can just say whatever I want, and I'm not going to be criticized by this person in front of me. While she's saying, what we really need is someone who's going to hold Putin accountable. Well, getting no accountability from this person while she is literally actually a former official of this country. So it shows media as partisan propaganda tool rather than informative tool.
Yeah. Well, and to me, all of this defense against whatever it is that Putin has to say has me wondering, what is it that they're so afraid of that he's going to say, right? What is he going to illuminate or propagandize, if you want to take their side of it, upon the American people about the Ukraine war, or about, what inconsistencies is he going to reveal in their positions over the course of the last couple of years?
Well, and something else too is just, I highly recommend people watch that Oliver Stone documentary with Putin. Like I said, it is recorded from 2015 to 2017, and it humanizes him. It doesn't put like these like aggressive Russian dubbers on top of him that make him sound like he's very, like crazy. Because I think that's what a lot of people's takes are, is they hear Putin talk because they're putting like MSNBC's putting this crazy Russian on top of him to speak the English for you. Mm-hmm. So you're thinking that he's way more like aggressive and erratic than he actually is. When in reality, when you hear him just talking from his own voice, he's just like very calm. He's just very, he's very stoic. It's very, and he'll just explain. It's like, well, I had a conversation with Obama about this, and me and Obama would talk every day when this was going on, and he's just like explaining the dynamics of how the geopolitics of all this works, and it's very fascinating. Like I recommend people watching it and just seeing like there's 4 hours of Putin for you. Judge for it, right? Mm-hmm.
Before we go any further, I'd like to just break for a quick commercial presentation from our sponsor, the Kremlin.
I am a Russian asset. There's in this vein, I want to play one of my top Trump moments ever when he was asked by Bill O'Reilly during the Super Bowl several years ago. Remember that interview during the Super Bowl when it was like 2017, right? I just want to play. This is one of my favorite Trump moments talking about this.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you? Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with him. He's a leader of his country. I say it's better to get along with Russia than not. And if Russia helps us in the fight against ISIS, which is a major fight, and Islamic terrorism all over the world,
right?
Major fight, that's a good thing. Will I get along with him? I have no idea. It's very
He's a
possible
killer,
I
though.
won't.
Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent?
Ooh.
It's real though. That's
Yeah, no, he's right. He's right.
I mean, but you see, like Bill O'Reilly, the guardian of conventional wisdom, like, did you know that Russia isn't under control over, by America, and they can say no to things, and so therefore they're bad guys.
He's a
and
killer.
he's just like, well, he's another leader of another country. Like, there's a vision of America as we're one country amongst a bunch of other countries. We're trying to get along so we can have peace and prosperity, whatever. And then there's a view that American foreign policy establishment elite should dominate the world. And if they don't dominate the world, Hitler comes back and,
everyone dies.
World War II again.
Yeah.
These are stupid worldviews, right? The latter one.
Yeah.
Trump's worldview is completely reasonable. We're just one country amongst others. We can't control everything. And then given the absence of control of North Korea or China or Russia or whatever, you should come to the table and say, hey, how can we get along? How can we work things out? But he kills his political opponents. That's like most dictators all over the world throughout all time do that.
Yeah.
You don't just not deal with them. You think Mubarak was like, hey, political opponent, let's go have tea. No, Mubarak killed people, right? He was an Egyptian dictator for like 30 years, 40 years, and we supported him the entire time. Mm-hmm. We supported him. We gave him aid.
Well, that exposes the dichotomy. It's like, if you can be a bad guy if you're on our team, right?
Yeah.
If you're under our control. But if you're not, then you're enemy number one.
Under Hillary Clinton, we supported the Saudi Arabian regime that killed a journalist who worked for an American company.
Khashoggi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're still supporting Saudi Arabia. No one's going to her and be like, hey, did you know that Saudi Arabia is a bunch of killers? No, because they will do what we ask them to do because we station our troops there to guarantee their passage of oil and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Crazy. Oh, I got one for you.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
I love that.
Have you guys ever read or studied any of Alexander Dugin, who's like the political science guru behind Putin?
Not like you have.
Yeah.
Putin propagandist.
True. Yeah, true. Just right from the Kremlin right here. So when the war broke out with Russia and Ukraine, I went and tried to find. There was a lot of talk around Dugin that started popping up, so I went and tried to find some of his books, and I was like, I'm just curious. I want to read it, and I found his book, The Fourth Political Theory, to be a very fascinating read in view of geopolitics. It was written back in 2009, and the way that he looked at the world, and it's actually watching through that Oliver Stone documentary, you can see where he's inspired Putin too. This guy. He looked at the world as there's been these three great political ideologies in recent years: Western liberalism, communism, fascism. And Dugin's proposing to the Russians that in order for us to be great, because we're no longer great, everything fell apart in the last century, it sucked, it was bad, and he's condemning where Russia was over the last 100 years, as Putin does too. Like, Putin hates the communists, right? Everybody wants to think it's like the return of the Soviet Union. No, like they want to do away with that. They want to do away with that history.
It makes no sense too. He is an owner of private capital now, one of the largest in the world. why would he be a communist? That just makes no sense, right? I mean,
Well, and that was the thing. So, like, what Dugan is proposing is we need to learn from the other great three ideologies, dispense with the negatives of those ideologies, and take the positives of them. So, like, we need to embrace certain elements of Western liberalism and individualism. We need to embrace certain elements of fascism and their views of nationhood, and we need to embrace certain elements of communism and their views of egalitarianism. Mash them all together, and we can put into what is called, in a German philosophical term, the Dasein. And the Dasein is the paradox of being an individual and with your own thoughts and having to integrate with society. And we need to create a Russian culture that enhances this view of, like, yes, you are an individual, but you're also one of us as well. And we need to blend those things together. And I found it to be a fascinating read. And also just like useful critiques of different countries in there, but also like being like, but that's what America does good at. You know, it's very like sober. It's a very sober read too.
It's really interesting to me. I mean, an irony that sticks out to me is how much you highlight how Russia is moving away from communism, and yet Western liberalism, at least the brand that the United States is subject to right now, far more resembles communism than anything else, I would say. I mean,
fascism.
Sure.
I think a lot of the ideology, like the ideological threads around egalitarianism, is very Marxist.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. I think socially, egalitarian Marxist, economically, commercially, whatever, we love big private cartels, which is fascism.
Sure.
Right? It's state-sponsored big private
philosopher of political systems.
Yeah, so that would be an easy way to distinguish between the three, right?
Sure.
So communism is like the state ownership of these things, right? Well, fascism says we're going to allow for private ownership, but it's going to be cartelized, so there's less, and so there's, you know, perfect profits for the one cartel. I'm using the word perfect profits there technically, like they mean the right profit margin by regulation. So then we can get the efficiency of liberalism without the inefficiency of communism and the problems of state ownership. But the cartel has to do what the state says and head in the right direction. Now, if you distinguish that from American progressivism, there is no distinction. It's the same philosophy.
Right.
Of we are all in this together. We're a bundle of sticks that have to hold together. Otherwise, we're going to be broken apart. Right. That's literally where the word fascism comes from. So that idea of state, corporatism or state-controlled cartels that then head in the direction that's said by the political leader, that idea itself is pervasive all across our economy, right? We love that idea in America. We just call it progressivism here rather than fascism so we can feel good about it. Russia has that too. What happened is to go from nationally owning everything to private ownership, you have to privatize everything. If you listen to Scott Horton, his account to it, and I think it's very interesting. I haven't dug into it enough, but his account of it is that effectively, after the fall of communism, the State Department, along with private actors, came into Russia and privatized everything. With that privatization, it actually tore apart the Russian economy in very terrible ways, a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of cronyism, a lot of terrible things that you would guess would happen when you have a nationalized everything government and you go to a large corporatized everything government run by the CIA or other kinds of actors from the State Department.
Well, and this was one of the things in the Oliver Stone interview, because one of the critiques of Putin was always laid out that Putin is doing away with a lot of privatization and trying to take state control back. And Putin was like, no, that's not what happened. And he goes to explain that no, there was like a handful of oligarchs who, based off of their relationships with the government, could make billions of dollars in like a second just because of their relationships with the government. And we did away with that practice and tried to install more merit-based systems. And it was just like kind of like the West would do, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, Russia
we're getting rid of the cronyism because the cronyism has been laden there since the fall of the Soviet Union because everybody's come in and cartelized everything, right?
Right. So so Russia, and in the MSNBC part of the world, right? Russia's like Liechtenstein, free market capitalism, right? They want to set it up as like a Republican utopia, like a conservative Republican utopia. It's not that. It's something far closer to us. It looks way more like our economy, just with more corruption and problems from a formerly state-owned capital system. So, should Putin, like from a prescriptive point of view, privatize more market, allow for more competition, all that kind of stuff? Yeah, sure. You could write prescriptions for it, but what he's dealing with is native to his country in this context.
Well, right? and that was another thing. Is Oliver Stone would ask him like, "Well, do you want to? Why aren't you getting there?" And he's just like, "Step by step."
Yeah.
Russia has 1,000 years of history. Like we got to go there step by step. There's a lot of barriers in the way. And he even says like bureaucracy runs the world at the end of the day. And he used that as an examination of American politics of like, it doesn't really matter who becomes president because the bureaucracy runs everything. But Russia faces the same problems. Yeah. And he just was blatant about that.
In our case, it's good that bureaucracy runs everything because Biden's not running anything.
I don't know if I would just call that good.
That's all relative.
All right.
If you are a small business owner looking for exponential growth, you have to connect with Adam Thuen at Intellectual Patriots. He will revolutionize your business game and help you get to the next level. Adam can streamline your business practices and advertising strategies to improve your bottom line. His expertise in data engineering means he can build you the systems you need to collect and analyze market data. His mission is to provide you with invaluable insights to fuel your success. From grant writing and business proposals to digital systems integrations, even AI management, Intellectual Patriots is a one-stop shop for cutting-edge solutions. Don't wait another second. Visit intelpatriots.com to learn more. That's INTEL Patriots.com.
Well, want to jump into immigration?
All right. Yeah. So we had a new immigration bill got negotiated between the Senate, Democrats using the Republican, and the White House. Tons and tons of billions, millions, gazillions, billions. That's not important. The important thing is it was sold as an immigration bill. It did almost nothing to change immigration policy, but it spent a lot of money on immigration. Therefore, the Immigration Police Union endorsed the bill. And then therefore it was used by a lot of Democrats to say that this was all, going to solve the immigration problem. And it's a typical Democrat strategy. Spend lots of new dollars, offset it by nothing. Don't cut anything. It doesn't matter how big the deficit is. Just spend new money, print it up, run that printing machine. We're going to spend more money, and that will solve the problem. It's just a matter of getting everybody enough of the tax dollars to solve the problem. But almost all the bill wasn't about immigration. It did spend new money on immigration stuff because that's been in the news. You saw Brett Weinstein, you saw all that kind of stuff and all the coverage of the millions of illegal immigrants who are coming to the country. But it spent even more money on Ukraine and Israel.
Really?
So it was the Biden administration using the issue of the moment. Like this is a branding thing we talked about last podcast, right? In DC, they look at Twitter too, right? In fact, they're on Twitter more than anybody. And what they saw was everyone freaking out about immigration. So like, well, we'll put immigration in the bill. And that will get us the military industrial complex and the contractors and the people who make the most money on that, the money they need to continue the war in Ukraine and to subsidize Israel. Not saying so the Israel thing is the right decision, but even the very pro-Israeli House conservatives said there's no offsets. There's nothing here to change. There's no immigration policy change of substance. Like there are small stuff that they added in as to an appeaser to House Republicans, but largely Senate Republicans were saying like this doesn't really do much because, and there was like a trigger amount of 5,000 people per day where they gave certain authorities away. Not important. The big thing there is that there was insubstantial policy change with a lot more spending. And at the last minute, before it even passed the Senate, the new speaker, the guy who got put in after McCarthy was kicked out, Mike Johnson came in and said, no, we're not even, no, dead on arrival. Not good enough. Get back to it. Mm-hmm. Give me actual policy reform. And that's exactly why he got put in as speaker.
Yeah.
So the guys who got throttled by all the conservative press, all these Glenn Beck and Mark Levin and all the conservative pundits and talking heads. Who was the guy, the Fox News guy, that Hannity? Hannity throttling these guys, calling them, betrayers of the country and not patriotic, like Matt Gaetz, Matt Rosendale, all those guys were in there fighting the good fight. They all just got bailed out by that speaker. That everyone condemned them for putting into power.
Awesome.
Right. And so it ticks me off when I watch that and they don't even recognize it. They just go like, oh, good job, Speaker Johnson. And they just move on. Like they didn't oppose putting that guy in. And, obviously the guy who was in before, he very likely would have bent the knee on this.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. Kevin McCarthy for sure.
Well, I mean, he was making deals on other stuff that was far less consequential to the U.S. public interest, where I feel like immigration is probably the most popularly aware issue that the U.S. is facing at the moment.
That's right.
Right. I mean, it's the one that's in the headlines. We got Texas dealing with this thing. We got the battle with the feds over it. Which, how did that end up, by the way?
Well, I mean, when we talked about it, what I tried to leave as a general impression was that this isn't a hot war. This is a conflict, right? It's a constitutional conflict. And we have these actually all the time between states and the federal government. This isn't new. So it is very old jurisprudence going all the way back to Marbury versus Madison about whether or not a state can prevent a federal officer from doing their job. But it's also very contemporary. It happens all the time where states and the feds are disagreeing about drug policy or Medicaid spending policy or all kinds of things that go to courts and then get sorted out.
Did somebody back off between the feds and Texas?
I think it's still in a conflict.
Yeah. So are we not going into the Boogaloo? Or
I don't think the Boogaloo's in it. I think there was never a chance of that, really, because the likelihood that a state officer is going to shoot at a federal officer is so low. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So basically they said, no, you can't come. And then the feds are kind of still playing the game. Because what are the feds going to do? Right? They can either get into a real hot conflict. They can wait on the court process to work, which would work better for them. Or they could literally be filmed cutting down border fences in an election year.
Which is a bad look.
Yeah.
It's a bad
so
look.
there's just like no good way for them to win on this.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, you do have reporting from Alex Jones, other sorts of figures on the right saying that a lot of this is an illusion too for gamesmanship on the right. That there is still a lot of illegal immigrants coming through. There's a lot of areas that still need border, barriers put up and actual surveillance stuff.
On that, I saw one video, and this is just a TikTok video of a guy like driving by a section of border fence, and it was like, you had Humvees and armed border patrol agents at one gate, and he's literally like a mile down the road, and then there's just an open gate and no one at it. And you're just like, well, wait. I mean, I get it. It's a lot of border, a lot of different gates and other, penetrations and places to have to patrol and deal with. But if that sort of thing exists, is this all just for show around these sort of like central areas where...
We talked about this too. Like the goal is to push people into a controlled process and out of an uncontrolled process. It isn't to stop all asylum seekers and all these other things, right? So to the degree to which what you could be looking at is a port of entry that just has that sort of thing saying it's inconvenient to come through here, so we're going to push you over here. That could be it. I don't know.
So it's just kind of like a triage, stop the bleeding where it's the worst, which is right here. Try to get them through at least the proper entry point where they
so
can
that
be...
you can actually get their information and set a court date for them and actually hear what their asylum case is. Because most of these people are asylum seekers and people who are, trying to escape, devastating economic conditions or political prosecutions or whatever, right? So because you're a Chinese dissident and you're a dude who's in China saying, I hate this COVID policy, and you're trying to stand up to your government and there's a hit out on you from your own government, you leave and you go to South America and you come to America because you hate COVID policy. That could be somebody, right? You would want to be able to maybe let that person in or not, right? You want to have that debate.
Yeah. Certainly want them to come in like through some sort of legal process.
Where you know who they are.
Yeah,
right.
Which we know that there are, I mean, they're sort of, the folks that are coming in the country are divided into, I forget the exact terminology of these, but the ones that they actually like can run into, they meet, and then the ones that never get intercepted at all. Right.
Right.
I forget what they call them, not runaways, but something like that. Where like gotaways, maybe, where it's like they're coming in through places that are desolate, aren't patrolled or guarded. We don't know who those people are at all, or how many of them there are, and
often by trespass, often by going over private land. And that's the other kind of component to this is the enforcement of trespass, where they're collaborating more with state police with private landowners to enforce the border. By using trespass as a legal mechanism to kick them out of the country.
Yeah.
The question is just like, it's an open debate we need to have, but we can't really have that debate as long as we have a crisis of 4 million people crossing the border, and many of them, I think like 3/4 or whatever, being completely unknown.
Yeah.
Where we don't have their information. We don't know if they're, just someone looking for a job, or if there's somebody who's actually here to, conduct black or gray hat operations, meaning they're here as a fifth column to actually destroy infrastructure in the case of a war, or have information operations or something like that to influence American politics.
Really quick, that term fifth column has been used a couple of times. Can we define that?
Means you're like, the technical definition means you're like it's like the same as like a third rail. Like, you have 4 columns that set up a structure and you're the 5th column. You're not really necessary. Like that's the idea there. I believe that's what that means.
Interesting.
So it's a subgroup within a larger society meant to undermine the larger group or nation, right? That's the idea. So it was like often considered that there was a 5th column of communists in America. in Hollywood specifically that were meant to propagandize the rest. The column as being like something that supports society and like it is unnecessary, right? It isn't need for the
unnecessary
order.
or perhaps damaging.
But that changes the underlying calculation of being in that a member of the larger group of society, the social order.
Yeah, like if you're within the 4 pillars of allowable opinion kind of a thing, and then there's these ones that you're not. Right?
I see.
And
the
they
outcasts,
might,
perhaps.
they could be the outcast, they could be the fringe, or they could be Russian assets. It could be whatever.
But it does have it tends to have like an intentional clandestine thing, right? Where it's not just people who are the wrong kind of people because I've judged them to be that way. It is more intentional, divine.
The basket of deplorables.
Yeah, right. It's like if you were a bad actor, how would you get them into America in order to undermine American political system in the event of a war? That would be a 5th column, or sleeper cell agents, or something like that.
Well, there's a conversation around that, right? I mean, with Brett Weinstein going down to the Darien Gap and observing what he observed. I mean, he's a scientist, so he's approaching it in a very like kind of controlled
biology,
scientific manner. What his assertion is, or at least the way I heard him describe it, was when he approached this issue years ago, when he was still a college professor, thinking about motivations behind some different population dynamics that are occurring within China. He didn't think that there was necessarily a probability that the young men leaving China, because of their population disparity with the one-child policy, were going to be coming to the U.S. in the form of some sort of military force. But since his trip, and we can dig into what he discovered and observed during his trip, he says he seems to have changed his hypothesis around that to see that it might be more likely that is in fact the case, based on some of the things he observed, which I found really interesting. Did you guys happen to listen to his interviews?
Yeah, there was also elements too, because there was tons of Asian men that were part of these groups, these migrant groups coming across the Darien Gap, and Darien Gap is in Panama.
And to describe it, it's like 60 miles of super dense jungle full of threats, and it's completely impassable terrain with steep, muddy hills and all sorts of stuff. I mean, thieves and you name it. It's incredibly difficult.
Well, and the interesting thing too is he was saying that one of the guys he was with was trying to like trick people into speaking Chinese, because there was people that were like trying to pretend to be other Asian, backgrounds. Yeah. And then he would like trick people into actually using Chinese instead of like Korean or something, right? So that was interesting, where there's people that seem to be trying to hide their nationality.
Well, I guess to back up one step, just to make sure that everyone's tracking this. So Brett Weinstein, biologist, has a podcast, the Dark Horse Podcast. He was recently interviewed by Tucker. He and his wife talked about this on their own show, which is a really good listen. I would recommend checking that out. He went down to this area of South America to understand where it was that all of the migrants that are coming into the U.S. are originating from. And it's Ecuador. They fly into Ecuador because they have very lax visa restrictions. You can fly in there with pretty much without any documentation at all. And then from Ecuador, they have to travel this really difficult path called the Darien Gap into Panama, where they are, then the state of Panama sort of has the responsibility of helping to manage these people in a lot of ways, but via camps where they can at least have some sort of infrastructure, and they're not just living off the land in
camp stuff
terrible
is also interesting.
Conditions. And then also trafficking them out of the country or through the country with the help of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, some of whom are like just directly, like their purpose is to traffic migrants through South America.
One of the interesting things is the linkage with the Department of Homeland Security. Is it the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, the Alexandros whatever his name is?
Yeah.
Mayorkas? Is that what his role is? Yeah, so he was on the board of one of these NGOs, which goes back to, this NGO goes back to the 1800s. And he is... Sorry, I'm getting distracted by you guys handling drinks.
I'm listening.
I can't keep my train of thought right now.
We're fighting over Zesties here. Sorry.
Yeah. Roll that ad.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Zesty Beverages. They're on a mission to unf the standard American diet by crafting drinks with fewer calories and more nutrients from real food. Their lineup of delicious offerings now includes Electric Peak Yerba Mate, postbiotic sodas, keto-friendly, ready-to-drink margaritas, and hard teas. Wondering what a postbiotic soda is? Well, head on over to zestybev.com to learn more and find a retailer near you. Once again, check them out online at zestybev.com. That's ZESTYBEV.com.
Sorry.
Sorry. Like,
Sometimes you just get thirsty. You need to grab yourself a zesty beverage.
Man, talking about the jungle just has me all parched.
yeah, I'm getting this wild grapefruit out of the jungle.
In the spirit of South America, I've cracked this Pina Montana.
But made right here in Bozeman. All right, so go ahead.
So what's up with Mayorkas?
Yeah, so with Mayorkas, so he was on the board of directors for this NGO that goes back to the 1800s. It's called HIAS. It's like the Hebrew something like. And what the group used to do was they would bring Russian Jews out during the pogroms and migrate them. And so this NGO has become very big in 150 years, and it has like a $60 billion budget, all this stuff. Wow. And they're the ones running the camps right now. And he's on the board of directors for it, for this group, which is just
currently.
I think he might have dropped it when he took the secretary position.
I would think that would be some sort of prerequisite, but these days you never know.
But he's also been like one of the big thorn in the sides for actually enforcing immigration laws and stuff too.
Well, right.
Like
he was just, you know, there was an attempted impeachment that failed, criticizing him for not actually enforcing immigration laws that are on the books.
Correct.
Yeah. So the dynamic there is there seems to be interesting clandestine elements that are happening here.
Yeah.
That's probably like multifaceted. It's not just China and the Belt and Road Initiative. Like there seems to be more going on here that we're just unclear on.
Yeah, there was some parts of the Weinstein interview I think were fascinating, and I think his environmental stuff with it, and like how the environment is being degraded by these people migrating across this jungle and leaving stuff all over it, and the terrible human tragedy of it. I really appreciate the coverage there. I wasn't so sure of like a lot of his conclusions, speculation, and stuff like that. But
he tried to be very clear about that. He tried to be like, now I'm speculating here, right? Like he did a lot of that.
I really appreciate that about him, because he did a great job saying like, here's what I saw, and then here's what I think based upon what I saw. But we do have a video of him kind of talking about some of the stuff that he was coming to conclusion on.
I went down thinking that I was going to see a migration, and other people have called it an invasion. And I came away with the sense it's probably literally both. The way that manifests is you have a massive movement of people through the Darien from Colombia. Most of those people actually start in Ecuador. And the reason they start in Ecuador is that Ecuador has a policy where they don't require a visa. So people coming from all over the world can land in Quito, Ecuador, find their way through Colombia, move through the Darien, and if they survive it, which not all of them do, they can then get relatively directly all the way through Central America into the U.S. By the time they've come through Darien, almost all of them have been robbed. Women are being raped. Lots of people are dying. The migrants talk about stepping over bodies. Many of them are South American, but that is by no means the whole story. People are coming from the Middle East. We met Afghans. We met people from the Caribbean, Haitians. There are people from Yemen, Iran.
So one of the things there is like the politics of the invasion rhetoric. Some of it's kind of is true in a sense, specifically when you look at the white replacement thing that the Democrats talk about regularly that apparently no one else is supposed to talk about, because if you talk about it, then you're a racist unless you're a Democrat. That we talked about some time ago.
If you talked about it a decade ago, you're fine. If you were a Democrat.
Which is that you import people who vote Democrat so that you can have a majority. Right. And this was an overt strategy of the Democrat Party for a long time. And Vivek talked about it, and now everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's a thing." And now we're talking about it again. Mm-hmm. So that's the sense in which I think is most accurate to invasion. I wonder about like the rest of it. There's like a stipulation and a speculation. It's debatable about whether or not a country like China or anyone else like Iran or whatever or South America or something like that, it has an overt policy specifically to invade America through covert means, to bring a bunch of, like I said earlier, fifth column people here to overthrow the government.
Right.
I don't think we have any evidence of that. But it's a risk because we don't know these people. Right. So that's kind of the space it's existing in.
Well, and that's kind of the purpose of things being clandestine, is that we're not going to know if it's there, right?
Well, I think there might be evidence, but there isn't proof. Right. The evidence would be that, as Brett Weinstein talks about, that there are two separate camps of migrants on the other side of the Darien. There's the South American camps, and then there are the specific Chinese camps.
Which is interesting.
They don't mix.
They don't mix, and he and his team were able to tour through the South American camp, but they were not allowed in to the Chinese camp.
So I sent this video to you guys some time ago, but I don't remember actually talking about it on the podcast. I don't know if we did or not. It's the muckraker.
I sent it to you.
Stuff. Oh,
yes.
Okay.
And you said it was bullshit.
Well, no, I did not. I said
yes, you did.
I said it misframed some things. I said it misframed some things because if you even go by their own stuff, like, for example, they'll talk about the Chinese camps and then they interview a Chinese guy and he's a political refugee.
Okay.
He's running from the Chinese government he criticized.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Maybe he's lying.
Sure. We don't know.
I mean, so if you can just deny evidence because it doesn't fit your preconception of a...
I'm not denying anything.
I don't mean you. I mean the proper you. Like if someone were to just deny evidence of people claiming to be political refugees without any evidence, and then say that therefore that's evidence that they're just because they're Chinese that it is an invasion of a black hat or something like that.
Sure.
That's where I get. I'm just saying we don't know, and we do have evidence of both directions. Their testimony is they're political refugees trying to run from a terrible communist dictatorship that locked down their entire country in a gulag for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. And
I would run too.
Yeah. Right.
I would run too.
Much less if you have a 20% unemployment rate amongst young Chinese men.
Well, but there are two separate things there, though, right? I mean, and Weinstein makes this distinction. There's economic refugee and there's political refugee.
Right.
Political refugee does get granted asylum in the United States, but economic does not or should not if you're properly following the law.
Let me ask you something. Philosophically, do you think there's a distinction?
I mean,
what's the distinction?
I don't think so technically, but I would say the distinction would be in most people's minds probably like, I can't get a job or the economy is total crap and I can't afford to feed my family. So I need to leave this place and go somewhere that I can afford to survive.
Right.
Versus, I'm a part of the minority party and I'm being, my people are at risk of being imprisoned or, discriminated against in a meaningful way because I don't have the right ideology. I would say that would be my primary distinction between the two.
Yeah. And I think I don't know.
It might be more nuanced. I'm sure it's more nuanced than that.
I'm actually not trying to suggest anything about immigration policy with this content, but I do want people to think about it. If you are a South American country that has been dominated by U.S., central, like U.S. agencies of foreign policy, like the intelligence boys, for 100 years, drug cartels, some of which are former assets of said intelligence agencies, like the Zeta drug cartel called Los Zetas, which we know is public knowledge. You can find it on Wikipedia, has connections to the intelligence agencies.
A lot of ex-CIA boys too, that de facto, they leave the CIA and then they start running all this stuff too. Like there's a lot of that goes on.
We used them during the Iran-Contra scandal to move drugs and money to American cities in order to, everyone knows the Iranian, that scandal, right?
Yeah.
So if you're from that country and the reason why your country is poor and there's no jobs and they're experimenting with socialism is because of 100 years of American foreign policy, what's the distinction?
Yeah, you're saying the economy is crap because politically they've been manipulated for a long time by the United States. Or whomever.
Intelligence assets of the United States.
Yeah.
So
you're saying,
which is a lot what's going on in like El Salvador. So like when you end up having Bukele come in here and he's trying to crack down on all this stuff and the American government's like, no, you shouldn't do that. It's like, yeah, but your agencies are doing this in my country, right?
Yeah, right.
And I'm not saying therefore we should accept more political asylums or economic asylum, right? But I am saying these are the reaping of what we have sowed.
Sure.
Right? Perhaps. Is at least a component of it. If you're going to do the Jordan Peterson thing, clean your room.
I didn't do it.
And you're going to take responsibility for your actions. That would be the embodiment of such thing.
For sure. I would contend that I don't think the United States is a very good asylum from political persecution or economic woes either. I mean, certainly orders of magnitude better than a lot of third world countries.
We already got the social credit system here, right?
But yeah, it's not as good as it could be or has been. I would say
it's been implemented though.
I think it could be better.
As someone who's felt the brunt of it, it's been implemented.
No, I don't dispute that at all.
But I think the average person that we're talking about in this case, they're on a list of a drug cartel that doesn't like them, and they don't like the drug cartel because of something that happened in their past. I've met people like that.
Yeah,
right.
Same.
It's a different level of resolution. Additionally, you can blend in with 350 million Americans, right, and try to go underground,
right? Well, and that's
while
the problem.
Earning 10 times the amount of wealth on a daily average,
and then sending it back to your family that is still back there, right?
Right.
And avoiding the laws around the payments by just using Bitcoin or something and just sending it directly to your family.
Right. But I think the thing that a lot of Americans take issue with is that, you know, a lot of these, I mean, the policies that we're seeing implemented or suggested are, you know, for example, giving migrants like credit cards that are re-upped regularly with thousands of dollars a week or a month, so that they can live in these cities, overwhelming public resources and infrastructure on taxpayer dollars while people are struggling to pay grocery bills and utility bills, and their communities are being literally overcome.
Eric Adams, mayor of New York, didn't he just announce some big, like, however many $1 million going towards refugees, right?
I think it's like 53 million.
Yeah, it's like 50. It's 50 something, right?
Yeah.
Well,
and it's to give them credit cards that are re-upped.
And just like a month ago, he's just like, we have a migrant problem. And then he's like,
but Joe,
let's pay for the migrants.
It was just recently. It was just recently they closed a school in New York so that they could house migrants there. The kids could not go to school, public school, that taxpayers are paying for.
To be fair, just for like a day and a weekend.
I know it was a day, but still, that's a day of school that a kid doesn't get that their parents are paying for.
Yeah, and it's on top of the thing. Like they have like an encampment that the government runs, and for some reason they had to shut down the encampment, move them to a school for a little while, and then move them back.
Yeah.
Even in that circumstance, we'll only find out about it because it had this outcome. But even in that circumstance, it's a terrible welfare program that shouldn't exist. I don't think it should exist. But these are the consequences of 100 years of American terrible foreign policy decisions across South America and Central America. And this is, and not to mention, I wonder why someone from Afghanistan might go to South America. Maybe because we spent 20 years and billions of dollars completely ruining the country.
I can't disagree with that.
I understand force.
Why would someone from Iran ever want to come to America?
You better
Maybe because they're run by a religious dictatorship that puts people in prison for not wearing the right headwear. Why does that dictatorship exist? Because we threw their democratically elected person in prison for not giving the British as much oil as they thought they should.
Well, and that's the thing about a lot of these places is, you know, everybody's always concerned about the caliphate's going to form in all these places. All of these places were like secular
Baathists.
Yeah, were secular areas.
Yeah.
Like Egypt, Libya, Syria, Iran. They were all like very secular and on the come up. And then we just like threw them all down. And now they're just like, you know, religious persecution is going on in the places, and there's like slavery happening, you know, all within a couple decades. That all just changed, right?
And now they're coming to America after our terrible foreign policy decisions. Now, that doesn't mean that it's therefore okay or that we owe them money or something, but we can't ignore the cause and expect to find a solution.
And what it means is we need to use the lessons of the past to make different foreign policy decisions today, knowing that we can be creating even worse issues 20 years from now if we let the Ukrainian crisis continue to go. Because we've already talked about on previous episodes, Ukrainian refugees flooding into Ireland and other European nations. I mean, those problems will compound there just like these problems have compounded here.
But what is it? The neocon project from the 90s, the project for the new American century, right? This was the whole concept of it is we won the 20th century, and now we are the unipolar world order that's just deciding all the rules, and we have to stamp down on any potential power hub that might pop up anywhere. So anyone that seems to be kind of like, because like we need to treat them as vassals. We're not going to treat them as partner states. We're going to treat them as vassal states. And anytime anybody's just like, oh, I'm going to go against the IMF or the World Bank or whatever, we're just like, oh, no, you want to have a gold standard? Can't have that, right? It's like...
You got to get rid of them. So, and that has a cost. And the cost is delayed. And because of the delayed cost, we can't correlate these things. Right? We don't associate it because it's not happening around... The migrant crisis across Europe made complete sense once you see that there's 1 million displaced Iraqis.
Yeah.
Right, from the Iraq War. Once you see that, you're like, oh, well, that makes sense why there's all these, and then not to mention the Arab Spring and all the violence around Syria and Libya. And all that kind of stuff, pushing people up into trying to escape war into Europe and causing tremendous loads and terrible things that are happening across Europe. I understand and sympathize with their problems, and it exists because of America's foreign policy. America's foreign policy leads decisions. So that's the thing. Is one of the things it just drives me, like, if you don't take it to there, you're not actually solving the problem. Additionally to that, America, there's an underlying assumption here that American jobs are being taken by immigrants. This is true for a select set of American jobs, but not most American jobs. The economics literature here is so clear. Mm-hmm. There's a huge difference between someone who can speak English and someone who can't in the labor market. And if you don't think that, spend 10 seconds thinking about it.
Yeah.
Would you rather work with somebody who can speak English or not as an American? Yeah.
But some of the costs of not having to deal with, like, if it's illegal labor, some of the costs outweigh the not being able to speak English, or the benefits outweigh, because you're able to pay them way less than you would somebody that's having to get through like FICA and all that stuff, right?
But at some level, there's probably competition happening where there's so much that it's a problem. Totally agree. At some point that it is. Are we there yet? We have no idea, because we don't base any of this stuff on marketplace demand, marketplace supply, how much actually of peaceful, healthy individuals who actually want to come into the country that would be helpful. We don't base it on that. We base it on how big a welfare programs can we build, right? We base it on, like, how many union jobs do we want to protect? All the wrong measurements we base it on. That's the brokenness of the system. And what I'm not advocating for is a completely open system. I'm just saying our current measurements are completely broken, and they're not based on reality at all. Yeah. Anyways, yes.
Well, speaking of war in the Middle East, we dropping bombs or what?
I just want to claim that we were exactly right. We predicted that he was going to drop over $100 million in missiles to fight back against a group that uses a $60 drone, and it's exactly what happened. Oh, I don't want to celebrate this. This is don't make me do it. Do John Cena. Don't do that one. Do John Cena.
Okay. Biden is John Cena in this scenario?
No, we are John Cena.
Are we John Cena?
Yeah, we're dropping.
Well, he dropped the bombs.
We're dropping.
His name is John Cena.
So I just saying
that's just a John Cena pile driver right into Iraq or something right there.
But it does demonstrate a lot of the explanatory power of the sovereign individual thesis, right? And technology has kind of changed the calculation that you could have a relatively small, relatively low technology or advanced tech sort of effort that creates a hugely disproportionate response from a president to spend, way less money. So a great example. So how much do we spend in Afghanistan?
I have no idea.
How much do they spend on 9/11?
I have no idea.
Right? Like, in the disproportionate response and how, America has serious deficit problems because of the billions of dollars spent in Afghanistan versus the maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in training and time and effort to make 9/11 happen.
Seems reasonable.
Well, and that's the thing. That's exactly the math that when the intelligence boys were training bin Laden to do this exact same thing against the Soviets in Afghanistan, the whole math is that you're going to spend way less money and they're going to have to spend a lot of money. And that's going to make the empire overexpand themselves. And so bin Laden just kind of took that same calculus and threw it back at us, right?
And the lesson from that is to realize that is the motive of your opposition, and rather than give them what they want, deny them what they want with a different strategy.
No, we got to spend more money on military spending, Dave.
Yeah, right. And more bases and stuff like that rather than strategic offshoring. Right. Whoa. Use drones to fight drones.
Well, and all the lobbying efforts will tell you that the more money you spend, the more successful you will be. Here's all the data that suggests that. Here, give us more money, right? Because you can make it data say whatever you want it to say, and they'll just keep feeding that into the system, right?
So they did come out with an actual identification of the group. It was Kataib Hezbollah. Now, how would you guess? Who would you guess that is?
Hezbollah?
Any guesses?
Well, Hezbollah would suggest Iran backing to me.
It's Shiite at minimum. Yeah. But yeah, they do indicate that. But guess where they came from?
I would guess that's...
They were formed in response to America's invasion of Iraq.
Yeah.
The mostly Iraqi citizens.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably
Iraqi
like
Shiites.
I was going to say it's probably like Syria, Iraq region, like in that area.
So
right?
this is part of the problem of America's invasion of Iraq. It's another collateral consequence. It's blowback from that. A bunch of dudes said, hey, we're being invaded. We're Shiites. They're invading the Sunni government. I kind of like it, but it is the great Satan, America, and they're going to come here to dominate us and bring in all the things we don't like, right? They're going to let the women vote and all that kind of stuff, right? So what they do, all those guys got together. They got weapons. They maybe went to Iran and got training and funding and all that kind of stuff. And now one of the reasons why the Shiites have become so powerful and why Iran has become such a hard target is because we overthrew their biggest opponent, Saddam Hussein. And now a Shiite government runs there who's kind of winking and nodding and saying, hey, we want America out. There's a lot of stipulation on this. I'm just repeating what's being reported.
Sure.
That the Iraqi government is saying, we want America out, so maybe you give them a hard time. Maybe you bum a little bit. Wink, nod, plausible deniability. So they're all Shiites. They're all part of the same group, right? And they definitely don't want America there. Oh yeah, and then we partnered with them to try to get rid of ISIS, because ISIS is a Sunni project. So we went to the Shiite militias and partnered with them to get rid of ISIS, and now they're attacking us for our support of Israel.
It's the Dave Smith theory.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite stories of all time it was probably back in like 2015 or so, was when I just see a headline that says, Pentagon forces fighting CIA forces in Middle East.
Classic.
Right? And you're just like, oh yeah, that explains everything right there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just the insanity of our Middle Eastern policy. We have to change it, and it won't happen until Americans say we need a different foreign policy.
Well,
right? We
Nevada might have just said that.
Ooh,
What's that?
This guy over here dropping transitions. Damn.
Nevada wants a different foreign policy. That's what I'm hearing.
They definitely don't want Nikki Haley's foreign policy.
Oh man, they want anything but Nikki Haley's foreign policy. In fact, we have a couple of images that I think we should probably pull up.
So the funny thing about this, so Nevada's primary happened, right? And Trump wasn't on the ballot, and there was a bunch of reasons for that. It was like they had like a caucus, but they also had a primary. I don't know. It was all a mess. But so the only person actually still running on that was on the ballot was Nikki Haley. But they also offered another option, which was none of these candidates. Well, I mean, and then a bunch of people that have already dropped out, they were also on the ballot too. So you end up having Nikki Haley here. She gets 33% of the vote with, and this is a screen grab from like a day ago, so these numbers probably aren't completely accurate. But then you have none of these candidates getting 60% of the vote.
Literally none of the above.
Yeah. So Nikki Haley lost to nobody in Nevada.
And somehow 4% of people voted for Mike Pence also.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. He's still in there apparently. And Tim Scott's endorsed Trump, so
Mike Pence dropped out. I don't know.
Okay, so can we explain why isn't Trump on this?
It's a whole mess of shenanigans with Nevada. Like they were like, do a caucus, don't do a caucus, and it was just like, at the end of the day, it wasn't part of anybody's calculus. It just didn't matter. They ended up putting all their delegates to the RNC.
No, you don't get it. It's a grand conspiracy by the Trump campaign to not have on the ballot so that Nikki Haley would lose to nobody.
Well, so
and look terrible.
That's her current narrative.
Well, and
okay, wait. I need you to explain this more.
Why don't we let Nikki Haley explain it?
Nikki explain.
Okay, sure.
Wait.
Everyone's favorite part of the show.
But before Nikki explains it, Joe, do you have anything to say?
Very respectable. Nice look. I like the buttons. The American flag pin is a nice touch. Nothing really remarkable to comment here.
Simple,
very plain.
simple, very
simple. Very presidential. Presidential, I would say.
I think she's hearing you.
Yeah, I think so. I'm having an effect.
I don't know, that last one, you really ripped into her though. So.
Well,
this one was pretty
piglet
atrocious.
ears.
I wish you would have. Anyway, let's go.
Okay, so here's Nikki explaining what happened in Nevada.
Does that situation in Nevada hurt a little bit?
No, I mean, Nevada, it's such a scam. They were supposed to have a primary. Trump rigged it so that the GOP chairman, who's been indicted, would go and create a caucus. We knew months ago that we weren't going to spend a day or a dollar in Nevada because it wasn't worth it. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't even count Nevada. That wasn't anything we were looking at. We knew that was rigged from the start. Our focus is on South Carolina, Michigan, Super Tuesday. So if you look what we did in Iowa and you look what we did in New Hampshire, we're continuing to grow. That's what matters, I think, more than anything else. But look at what happened this week. Here you have Republicans lost a major vote on the border. Republicans lost a major vote on Israel. Donald Trump was found that he will not have immunity in all of these court cases coming up. The RNC chair is fired. All of this chaos is happening around us, and Donald Trump's fingerprints are on every bit of it. We can't continue as the Republican Party to go forward with this chaos. You don't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos, and that's why we've got to see a change.
Wait, so she just endorsed Joe Biden's border bill? Is that what just happened? Because conservatives said no to it? That's example of chaos, as she defines it? This woman is terrible. She's absolutely horrible.
I have a question also. She said the head of the RNC got fired.
That's right.
Yeah, so
the one Vivek was criticizing.
Ronna McDaniel.
That was wild.
She didn't get fired. I don't think she's just stepping down. Yeah, she resigned. But
after South Carolina, so she wants to watch Nikki get roasted one more time.
She's got to roast the pig one more time.
Oh man! So
your words, not mine. Lest anyone think I criticized Nikki Haley inappropriately. I said only
How
kind
dare
things.
you, sir?
Only kind things.
How dare?
So what happens if she loses South Carolina? Is she?
I mean,
primary rolls on.
Yeah.
Trump trounces through the rest of them just like he has.
Yeah,
all of them so
at
far.
what point is she just drop?
No, she sticks around in case he actually gets thrown off of.
In case he goes to jail.
Yeah. And even then, he still probably wins, even if he wins from jail.
Because you can win from jail.
Yeah, there's no.
And
there's no caveat there.
Which is crazy.
She needs to be the
And I like it.
she needs to be the
decision.
symbol for the neocons of the Republican Party and continue to be that voice, because otherwise there's no voice that happens, right?
Yeah.
So
there's no one attacking him from ostensibly from the right, as she endorses the policies of Joe Biden.
Hilarious.
Actively on television.
yeah, like. Because that's the thing is, like, everything that's going on in the primary right now, it's all symbolic. It's symbolic of where the culture of the GOP is heading. So that's what matters. And I just know Bennett's like symbolism. Right.
It's on the second page. I got you.
Man.
But that matters.
Symbolism.
That matters for the sake of where the future of the party ends up going. Because, like, are we going to end up seeing Trump here for 4 more years and then another Trump person like that pushes half of the country in a very specific direction for decades, right? And like that's what this battle is over, in my opinion. Why the primary actually matters, and why the Never Nikki movement that Rand Paul started is like a very important movement. All of these people need to come together and be like, everything that Nikki represents needs to be crushed.
All right.
And it's
Theoretical, hypothetical situation. Somehow Trump is disqualified from running. Nikki Haley's the only one left in the race per se. Can Vivek come back out of the darkness and still run
at the convention? Oh yeah. So if
so you're saying there's a chance?
No, I would not put money on that.
Yeah, because this is all about the delegates at the convention.
Yeah,
right? The convention ultimately decides everything.
And there was a bunch of rules rules changes after 2008 and 2012 that made bound and unbound delegates and all that kind of stuff a major question depending on state. And as things change, there's delegates who are there on behalf of another candidate. If that candidate pulls out of the race, right? Say Donald Trump has an unfortunate run-in with an assassin's bullet or something like that. All of those delegates then become unbound, and then at delegation can then figure someone else out.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. For sure.
Some states might throw another election up just to give delegate guidance and say, here, now that he's no longer in, here's that. So Iowa all of a sudden runs another primary. Totally possible.
What? They can do that?
Oh yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So it's important to understand. Parties are private organizations. Mm-hmm. Right, they're semi-public in all these important ways that have to do with elections, stuff like that.
They're working with the states on how to run the elections and stuff like that, right?
With varying degrees of freedom of association rights, depending on state. So therefore, there's different kind of bounds, either in their kind of founding charter and the rules that run them as a private organization, or in their state legislation that kind of say, and inform what they can and can't do.
This is why the process is different for Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. They all have like the Libertarians don't even do this primary process. They just go to the convention, right?
Right.
The Democrats, they have the whole superdelegate thing. And remember with Debbie Wasserman Schultz rigging the election against Bernie Sanders and all the WikiLeaks and Seth Rich dying and all that stuff, right?
Just remember all these things.
Just remember those things in 2016. Remember how all that happened.
I remember.
Actually, very funny. Going back to the Putin stuff, Putin mentions that in the documentary.
Really?
Yeah, he talks about like, remember that time when the Democratic, the head of the Democratic National Convention,
they blamed it on the Russians.
Yeah, because
really?
that was what was being used. Oliver Stone was like, so there's all this cyber attack stuff going on in the 2016 election.
Yes,
and
that's
right. And Putin's just like, remember when the Democratic Party did that?
Well, I mean, the Democratic
Party, same year.
They haven't changed at all. I mean, these are the same party that has not done a primary because Biden's the candidate. Specifically cut, RFK Jr. out of primaries in certain states and said, we're just not going to do it here.
And RFK's favorability right now is interesting. Yeah. Like, it's interesting just there might actually be a third party swing. Like, he's not going to win, right? Yeah. But, like, it's really going to matter.
Well, imagine if Bernie had some actual huevos and, did something about it rather than just totally bow down to the structure.
Well, and there are two other candidates running in the Democrats right now, Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson. Anyone ever hear anything from them? Right?
Nah.
No. But what we do know is that Democrats are also, I think it's MSNBC, knows that parties, specifically third parties, everybody but the Democrats, are a threat to democracy. So we have to keep them away from the ballot box.
So historically, at least modern history, they're spoilers. But with the current level of dissatisfaction with Trump and Biden, is there any chance you see this year could be different?
No, I think that third-party candidates are spoilers. I mean, history could potentially repeat itself again. And now, more than ever, the idea of a third party is a threat to our democracy. This is not the time for this. I understand the frustration that the American electorate has. People always express a certain amount of frustration with the two-party system. But that's the system we have. And we are not in a position now where we have two candidates who equally who are equal threats to our democracy. Donald Trump is a threat to our democratic system. He says he wants to be a dictator on day one. President Biden doesn't pose that threat. It's a policy difference. Or maybe people think that he's too old. Okay, well, you need to take a step back and look at what the choices are here. Third parties do not work. They're spoilers. So if you want Donald Trump to win the election, then go ahead, throw your vote away and vote third party. If you don't and you want to maintain our democracy and work within our system to reform it, maybe down the line.
All right, that's enough. Wait, did you say she's a former?
Isn't that what it said in the beginning? Like, go back to the first cut to her. Maybe
when it had her lower third up.
Yeah.
Former GOP comms director.
This shows you
that's
how much of the comms directors in various different roles and campaigns
are mercenaries.
Are mercenaries. They don't care. Whatever will get them popularity and numbers and whatever. They'll do it.
Well, it is funny because she's going on talking about third parties, and then she just sneaks into Donald Trump. He's going to be a dictator on day one, and he's also a threat to our democracy. So it's just anybody that's not Biden is just a threat to our democracy, right?
Well, yeah, because Biden can't function.
I think Biden represents the will of the people.
Yeah. We really want things to be run behind the scenes. We don't actually want to know how the process works. We don't want someone who's articulate and is going to tell us what's going on because that would sacrifice the illusion.
It's all about round-the-clock sex. It's all, come on, man.
That does shatter illusions, for sure.
Shatters more than that.
All right, so round it out for us, Kyle.
So, as we continue to rag on Nikki Haley, Nikki Haley was on, Jimmy Kimmel? Jimmy Kimmel has a whole bit about celebrities reading mean tweets. And Nikki Haley was given some mean tweets directed at her, and she's supposed to read them for comedy.
Imagine for a minute that you're the comms director is this is a really good idea. We're gonna get so many views on this. Everyone's going to love it.
Well, all the Dems are gonna love it.
Got a lot of views.
She before we go into, she tweets out, "There are always going to be haters and doubters, but that means we're doing something right. The best way to troll the trolls, have a good laugh. Make America normal again. Hashtag.
Yep.
Return to normalcy. Steal that. Return to normalcy. So yeah, here is let's do this.
Nikki Haley live. Mean tweets 24.
Everybody hates you. Really?
Yeah.
I think my husband loves me.
About 60%.
Genuinely.
Didn't she have a couple of affairs?
Oh.
Didn't she rename her husband too?
To her high school sweetheart.
Yeah, she renamed her husband to her high school sweetheart. We never talked about that on the
John
show.
to me. Yeah, we never talked about that on the show. That's because I don't know how substantial that reporting is. I never did the research.
There's just a lot of rumors around these things during her time of governor and stuff. And then okay, here's the next one from Andrew Tate. Funny enough,
Terrified of Nikki Haley. Any man who knows how vindictive, evil, short-sighted, and psychotic women can be. This guy can't be married. Coupled with a basic understanding
he's got like 5 wives.
Physiognomy, takes a single look at Nikki Haley and is terrified. I genuinely believe her victory would spell the end of the free world. Dude, I don't even know what to say about that. I don't know what to say about that. That's crazy. Nikki Haley has a
Wait, pause real quick. Now, this does raise the very important political question: is does she put off crazy girlfriend vibes? That's the physiognomy part. That's like what
physiognomy is like how somebody's face
evokes in
you. Yeah.
Physiognomy.
Physiognomy.
Did I say it wrong?
I think it's a silent G.
Is it a silent G?
I think it's a silent G.
I've only ever read the word on Twitter.
Yeah. I thought it was
I was going to say we should put up a poll. Does Nikki Haley put off crazy girlfriend vibes or not? But now I think we should put up a poll. Is it physiognomy?
I'll tweet it out. I'll tweet it out right now.
Tweet it out.
Yeah. And wait, one more thing. Was that like clapping at the wrong time really weirdly done? Did you hear that? She's middle of reading the tweet and they're like clapping. I was like, what?
Well, it feels like
laugh track is off.
Someone fat fingered the laugh track.
It's not actually the audience.
Yeah, I think these probably aren't audience. Yeah, this is probably just in a room and they're doing the thing, right?
Okay.
But bad mix.
So the next one comes from Still Gray, which is Ian Miles Chong, whatever, the Malaysian dude.
No idea.
He's always sucking Elon's dick on Twitter.
Yeah,
he's
you've
that guy.
talked about him before. I remember that description.
Nikki Haley has a room temperature IQ. True or false? Wow. Nikki Birdbrain Haley.
This is from Trump.
Is losing big, all in caps, in the polls against Crooked Joe. Where? I haven't seen it. I am beating him all over the place. She is weak on the border. I passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. I'm the strongest border president ever. Well, then why did you let 3 million illegals come into the country under your watch? That's all you have to know. Exactly.
Why are people laughing at this? This isn't funny.
Just when you think Nikki Haley can't get more annoying, the next day happened. Wait till tomorrow.
Wow, that was so cringy.
This is so
and not well done.
It is funny because Cat Turd, who was one of those tweets in there, is under here saying, "You just proved my tweet right with this laugh track cringe."
Yeah, it was so bad. That is so cringy. It's like they recorded that and like someone was like, "Yeah, post it." Like they listened to that laugh track and thought that's good enough.
Oh, there's a template.
A template.
We should have used that one.
Okay, I'll save it for you.
Save that.
I'll send it to you. Joe.
Okay, anybody that's looking for good memes, go to the Discord.
Was that actually on the Kimmel show, or is that just something her team?
That's her team. Her team built that.
What was it? Because like because
there's no branding for
Kimmel or any of that stuff.
Oh, you're right.
So
it's meant to take advantage of the internet meme to get views. And
she's trying to pull the.
They just stole his thing.
Ideally, you use that as a platform to push back in a funny way, right? And show yourself as relatable and down to earth, and be able to take criticism and stuff like that. But instead, it comes across as just super duper.
Well, because normally the people who do it will like say a joke after. She should have hired some joke writer.
Yeah.
She should have hired us.
At least.
Is what you're saying.
Wait, you're telling me this wasn't actually on, they put this out and it wasn't on the show?
Yeah, go to
figured
the first, the intro video. So if it was, it would have.
Oh yeah, it would have
something on here. No, this
Just-
was made by a digital director of some kind.
Oh, so this is a pretend late night show.
Yeah, you guys didn't know that? I thought that was obvious.
No.
I purposely didn't watch it until this.
No,
No, I didn't either.
Like we put it in the thing, and I'm just gonna wait till the podcast.
it was
to actually watch
cringier than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
Because I also looked at it like, that's going to be cringy. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Whoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Well, that
But Joe, the other how's her fit?
I don't know. You can't really
see
tell.
enough of it.
It looks
It's
fine.
Pretty.
I found her teeth distracting. That's all I'll say.
That's all we've got for you guys. Thanks for watching and listening. Please help us get to our first tier of monetization on YouTube. Watch this thing on YouTube if you can. Put it on silent in the background. I don't care. We got no ego about it. And we're going to be doing some cool stuff on TikTok soon. We've got TikTok lives coming. So lots of exciting things orbiting the human reaction experience. Looks like I went out of focus.
Check out our Substack.
Check out the Substack. We got David writing on the Substack here and there. We'll have the link in the description. Kyle, what are you doing?
Well-oiled machine. Just as we're closing out, he's just like, "Oh, focus."
Well, that's all right. Nobody needs to look at me anyways. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
Told you her teeth were distracting me.
Thanks for tuning in to Human Reaction. Help us fight internet censorship by liking, commenting, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with your friends. To find us around the internet, visit linktree.com/humanreactionpod.